How's it going, guys? This is a ongoing study of the Yoga Sutras. Today we're going to be doing the first pada. This is my translation of the Yoga Sutras. I'm the only person who has a comparative reasoning translation, which is the translation for with multiple translations for each sutra. Most people either have just the sutras or the sutras with a commentary. So my copy is unique from that. After studying the Yoga Sutras for 15 years and taking 10 months of my life to write my own translation, what I can say is that this is an essential text. Some of the lines are outdated with the advent of astrology and things like that, but most of them are very important, and some of them are just essential to know, especially in the first, second, third pada. So, studying the text repeatedly brings you to a higher spiritual place, and what you feed your mind is so important. And in the sutras, it says that you're supposed to study the sutras back and forth until you know the whole text and you embody them. So here we go. Sutra 1-1. Yoga is being fully present in this moment, body, mind, emotions, spirit, and soul. So here, Patanjali is trying to explain to you what yoga is in one line. And the way that Patanjali explains things is extremely concise. He doesn't play around. He doesn't want to make money. He's not trying to sell you anything. He's giving you, with a little amount as possible, what yoga is. I give 3 translations for this. Yoga takes place now. Yoga happens in this moment. Sutra 1-2. Yoga is stilling the mind. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is cessation of the fluctuations in consciousness. Yoga is keeping the mind calm and focused. Sutra 1-3. Then the mind rests within the soul. Second translation. Then the seer dwells within its own light. Third translation. The spirit experiences itself when the mind is still. So here, Patanjali openly talks about the soul, and that's why I really like this text. They talk about the soul and they talk about God here, whereas a lot of these other texts they didn't. And in Sankhya philosophy, Buddha had access to this text in the Sankhya philosophy, but it openly talks about God, where some of the other texts don't openly talk about God, especially Buddhist texts. Buddhist texts, the Dhammapada, they don't talk about God. In the Yoga Sutras, they do. Sutra 1-4. Otherwise, the soul identifies with the fluctuating consciousness. So here, when you're thinking about something, that's your soul identifying with it. So your soul experiences this world through the brain and then the 5 major senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the taste, and the skin, if you really break it down, right? So what happens is that the soul views this world and then sees something beautiful and ugly, experiences pleasure and pain, and it gets entangled with it. So when the mind is calm and still, the mind comes into the soul. But when it's not, it's too busy identifying with the outside world, with worldly things. I give 4 translations, but we'll just do the first translation for today. Sutra 1-5. The fluctuations in consciousness are 5 in origin. They may be detectable or hidden, painful or painless. So I give 2 translations for this. He's telling you what makes your mind start to go into flux, which the Buddha really expounds on this: stress, worry, dukkha, right? Dukkha, stress, worry, pain, unhappiness, sorrow, misery, mental suffering, emotional suffering, physical suffering. Okay? Second translation. There are 5 categories of mental movements. They can bring affliction or be free from affliction. So pain and pleasure. They can make you happy or they can make you sad. Sutra 1-6. Here's where this text really gets important now. When we get into the 1-6, this is the stuff that everybody on the planet should know, right here. They are caused by right knowledge, wrong knowledge, delusion, sleep, and remembrance of things past. 1-7. The sources of correct knowledge are direct perception, logical reasoning, and factual text. Now here, it's so important because I talk to so many people, and there's such this thing going on: belief, not belief, what's true and what's not true. Here, the text plainly says the sources of correct knowledge are direct perception. It means you saw it with your own eyes. You experienced it with your own experience. Logical reasoning, it means it can be deducted and proven through logical reasoning, like Einstein's theory of relativity or mathematics, 1 + 1 is 2. This stuff it's proven on paper with mathematics. And three, factual text. And this is where it's important. You know that this is a factual text, it's a trusted text. Those are the three ways that you know that something is real. So it's not about belief. So many times people, oh, I believe in this. I believe. Belief is something that you do in the beginning to look into something that can't be seen alone just with the physical eyes. But the belief has to be able to be backed up through perception, logical reasoning, and factual text. And also sometimes there's other levels of truth. In other words, if you're seeing a lower level of truth, everything is true. But if you're seeing things from a higher level of truth, that doesn't say that the lower level of truth is not true. It's just you have a higher understanding than that. There's this story about an octopus and a fish. And the octopus runs into the fish. They start having a meaningful conversation. And the octopus says, well, have you ever seen dry land? And the fish goes, dry land, what's that? And the octopus says, oh, well, you go up to the edge of the water and you walk outside, there's dry land there. And the fish starts laughing at him. He starts ridiculing him. He goes, there's no such thing as dry land. You're a kook. The octopus says, okay. The octopus goes away. A couple days later, the fish bites onto something. It has a hook. Boom, he gets yanked out of the water. Next thing you know, the fish is on the boat flopping, and the fish goes, man, that octopus was right. See? Sutra 1.8. Wrong knowledge originates from a distorted understanding of what is real. So there is real and there's not real. There's right knowledge and there's wrong knowledge. 1.9. Uncertainty arises when knowledge is based on words alone and is devoid of reality as its basis. Second translation, delusion originates from words that are not true to reality. That's why these sutras are extremely important, because everybody should agree on things because it's all fact. Like, different people have different perceptions, and if you're perceiving something through an opinion or a personality or a point of view, they might differ. But if the experience and the logical reasoning and the factual text don't disagree with each other, then they're right. So we as humans all should agree this is right and that's wrong. 110. Dreamless sleep is the mind state that is absent of perception. So here he's explaining to you, dreamless sleep is the point where you lay your head on the pillow until the point where you dream. That's dreamless sleep. 111. Memory is the unaltered remembrance of words and experiences. 112. Repeated practice and non-attachment control these 5 fluctuations of the mind. Second translation, I'll give both for this one. Regular practice and renunciation still the fluctuations of consciousness. So by practicing meditation, and here, it doesn't matter if you're Buddhist, yogic, or Catholic Christian, any type of faith that follows Jesus. It doesn't matter. All 3 of those involve meditation and stilling the mind and the consciousness. In Christian, as a devout Christian, you meditate on God. Meditate on God and his kingdom and everything else we put upon you, okay? In the Buddhism, you're focusing on the universe, you're focusing on the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, you're focusing on these things, but they're not physical, okay? And in the yoga, you're practicing meditation on one point, you're practicing meditation on breath, and you're practicing the mind on things that are not physical, but all 3 are to calm and still the mind. 113. Effort towards steadiness of mind is practice. So what is practice? When you sit there and try to stop your thoughts and calm your mind. Steadiness of mind. Sutra 114. Practice becomes firmly grounded when practiced vigilantly for a long time. So what they're saying here is you got to really dedicate yourself to your meditation. For me, when I go through an intense period of emotional suffering, usually through attachment, after you go through the intense period of emotional suffering, then you're motivated to practice. You're really motivated to practice. Because a lot of people, they're numbing their pain. They're numbing their pain with alcohol. They're numbing their pain with food. They're numbing their pain with television. They're numbing their pain with sex. They're numbing their pain with whatever, just chasing a pleasure. But in the yogic practice, you're supposed to accept your pain for purification. So you're not running from pain anymore. You're not trying to cover up your pain. You're trying to find what is the source of your pain. Sutra 115. Renunciation is the practice of freedom from desire. Second translation. Non-attachment is the state of mental mastery, free from craving for sense objects. Again, just I can't express how important these sutras are. This stuff, these sutras should be taught to everyone. Everybody should read this. Sutra 116. The highest level of renunciation is when one transcends all earthly attachments and perceives the soul. Well, how do I perceive my soul? You perceive your soul by looking inwards instead of outwards and finding the source and the origin of all your thoughts. And it was Dharma Mitra who made me realize what's a realized yogi. A realized yogi is a yogi who's realized his soul. So what Dharma Mitra taught me was this. And when he did, it was a very profound statement. And he did it so funny. I love the way that Dharma talks and speaks. He's like, your soul is in the right side of your heart, and it's the size of your thumbnail. Right when he said that, I was like, oh, that's where my soul is. At that point, I became a realized yogi. So if you're getting in touch with these teachings, that's good karma for you. Like if you don't get it from some kind of a high-level practitioner or a text or a master, it's very hard to get on your own. It's like you're trying to navigate the ocean and you don't even have a compass or a map. These teachings here are extremely helpful. 117. Continued effort and non-attachment develops 4 types of samadhi: self-analysis, union, bliss, and the experience of pure being. 118. When practice of cessation of mental fluctuations is firmly rooted, only the impressions remain. So after a while, when you start to be able to still your mind, your memory starts to bubble up. Mental impressions. Sutra 119. In asamprajnata samadhi, one may experience existence without a body or become one with nature. This sometimes leads to isolation, deep loneliness, or intense longing. See, I don't think that this is a particularly important sutra, but they're telling you when you practice, you might come to a place of boredom and isolation and loneliness, and that's normal. Sutra 120. One must practice with confidence, vigor, alert memory, and the power of absorption to break the spiritual complacency. So if you come to that place in your practice where you feel miserable, you feel lonely, you feel longing, the only way to break that is to find more fire and passion for your spiritual practice. Sutra 121. Those who practice vigorously with intensity are close to the goal. Sutra 122. There are differences between those who are half-stepping, average, and serious about their practice. So if you're taking your practice like, yeah, I'm going to meditate on Monday and maybe I'll meditate again on Sunday after I go out and have some beers, you're not going to get anywhere. If you're practicing a little bit, you're a little bit more serious into it, but you don't know if you're into it or not, yeah, you'll get some progress. But if you really want to make the goal, you have to be serious about your practice. You have to be very dedicated about your meditation. If you're suffering physical pain, mental pain, emotional pain, if you're suffering through that, then you have a reason to practice. It's only when we go through an intense period of deep suffering, the loss of a family, loved one, child member, girlfriend, wife, when you go through that emotional suffering, that's the best motivator to get you into your practice. Sutra 123. Where the consciousness may be stilled by deep meditation on God and total surrender to Him. So now, that's why I love the Yoga Sutras. They're talking about meditating on God, and it goes along with Christianity. Not that Buddhism doesn't, but a lot of Buddhists that I talk to, when you start to talk about God, the Buddha. So it's harder to speak to a Buddhist about God. With the yogic text, they talk about God. And the reason why I think, I'm so almost sure about it, the Buddha didn't talk about God is because you have 100,000 different people. Every single one of them has their own idea about God and different gods. And if you start to talk about God, it gets you into an argument. The Buddha was very skillful. He knew how to avoid getting into arguments with people. He knew that people were looking for an argument with him. He knew as soon as he mentioned God, they were going to get into an argument. So why is he going to say that there's some kind of permanent thing in the sky when he's speaking to people who haven't reached his level, that when he says God, they're going to argue? I think that's the only reason why Buddha didn't speak about God. The second translation, or the mind may be restrained by concentrating on where all the energy comes from. So here, when you're doing deep Taoist meditation, focusing on the source of energy, trying to cultivate your energy, If you follow the energy, the wind, the sun, you follow it back to God. Sutra 124. Well, because in your soul, there's a light. And whatever's in your soul, God, it's part of God. So God's energy is in your soul. So you have a piece of God in you, and it's not physical. And it's physically, when you meditate on it, it's provable. Like when you follow your thoughts and your memories, they don't just bubble up from the brain. It's scientifically proven that the brain doesn't have enough memory to hold all of your life experience. So where is it kept? If you pay attention, they'll bubble up from the soul. So when you're meditating like that, your memories start to bubble up. It bubbles up from the soul. And see the brain, when you go throughout the day, the brain has to identify threats, pull up your memories so that you can survive. All right. If you see a snake, the brain goes, oh, snake, and you have to react to it. But the brain is only a mirror or a medium for the soul to experience this reality. And it actually tells you what the purpose of reality is. The purpose of reality is for your soul to be happy and experience existence and to transcend reality, to transcend duality, to transcend to a higher level, to release all of its earthly attachments and become one with God. Second translation. God is the source of all energy, free from afflictions, actions, the ripening of accumulative karma, aversion, and desire. 125. God is the origin of all energy and knowledge. I'll give all three translations for this one. For the Creator, the seed of omniscience has grown to a state that is unsurpassable. Omniscience is all-knowingness and all-consciousness. Third translation. God is the ultimate source of the light of wisdom. Sutra 126. God is the Alpha and the Omega, the teacher of all beings, with no beginning and no end. Second translation. Unconditioned by time, God is the absolute guru. Sutra 127. God's sound form is Om. So now, I go to sign up to this Bible group the other day, right? I'm like, I need more word in my life, okay? So I go to sign up to this Bible group. And the person who's supposed to welcome me in there. Now, this is the concierge. They direct me to her message group. And she goes, are you a Qigong practitioner and a Reiki practitioner? I go, yeah, I am. And she wouldn't respond to me after that. So for me, it's like fathoming. Jesus said to love one another like themselves. Jesus says, focus on your own dirt, not the dirt in other people's eyes. But yet you're welcoming people to a Christian group and you're black banding them because they practice Qigong and Reiki. I mean, are you going to tell people they can't come to the group because they eat food? Like, are you going to tell? It's like, it's absolutely ridiculous. So here, when you see the yogis doing Om, Om is God's vibration. In the Om, there's the beginning, the middle, and the end. How God created things, their steady flow of existence, and then the ending of them. So when you do Om, you're actually meditating on God. Now, that's important to know because that's God's frequency. Second translation, Om is the creator's name as well as form. Sutra 128. Repetition of the syllable Om with full presence of mind, body, and soul will allow one to realize its full significance. So the Om is a direct keyway to oneness with God. You can meditate on the word, you can meditate on God. Either way, this text is bringing you to the same spiritual state as the Christianity. And then they get into this, that, look, I worship Jesus. I'll get down right now on my knees and beg to Jesus. I love Jesus. If Jesus comes back to earth, I'd be very, very happy. I don't doubt that he might, but it doesn't mean that you can't study the Yoga Sutras. Like, there's nothing in the Yoga Sutras that goes against Jesus' teaching. Sutra 129. Japa of Om while meditating on God clears hindrances to self-mastery. So the vibration of the Om, if you take a magnet and you rub it over like a credit card strip, it might strip it. See? So the Om, in the mind, the fetters that are in there, greed, aversion, so hatred and greed, right? The two first hindrances below lack of knowledge: ignorance, you don't know; hatred and greed. When you do the Om, whatever type of fetter that you have, non-virtue, vice, fetter, Om cleanses that from your mind. Sutra 130. See, now this text is so important. There's definitely more texts that are less important than the other ones. This is another one that's very important. The hindrance to spiritual enlightenment are disease, inertia, doubt, carelessness, laziness, sensuality, erroneous views, failure to keep one's understanding firmly grounded, and slipping from the ground gained. One of the most important sutras in the book. This is what's keeping you from being fully enlightened. Right here. 131. The symptoms that accompany these hindrances are pain, despair, anxiety, and disturbed breathing. This is why the first pada. So they're saying these are the 10 things that keep you from being totally at peace and one with God. Then they're saying the result of having these hindrances or fetters or non-virtues is these 5 things. What could be more important to know than that? Sutra 132. Practicing single-minded concentration is the best way to prevent the hindrances and their accompaniments. Sutra 133. Inner peace is achieved and maintained by cultivating friendliness towards those who are happy, compassion for those who suffer, goodwill towards the virtuous, and indifference towards the non-virtuous. This sutra, this is why I'm repeating them, because this one is very hard for me to remember. But the indifference towards the non-virtuous is the only issue that I had, because you want to teach people, you want to help people, and you try to help somebody who's non-virtuous and they just suck you into hell. So, yeah. Sutra 134. The mind can also be calm by holding the breath after exhalation. It's another thing. This book gives you some physical tools, some spiritual tools to work with. 135. Or by contemplation of an object that helps maintain steadiness of mind and consciousness. 136. Or by concentrating on the luminous, blissful light within. Second translation. Or inner stability is gained by remaining free of sorrow and filled with light. Third translation. All 3 of these translations are so important. The inner stability is gained by contemplation of pure light and consciousness. Sutra 137. Or when the consciousness is free from longing. Or by contemplating a mind that is free from attachments, one can achieve stillness. Sutra 138. Or by concentrating on the consciousness experienced while dreaming and during the dreamless state. Now here, you're supposed to meditate on the waking state. That's the state when you're up and about, you had your coffee, you're doing your thing, you're exercising, you're working. That's called the awake state. The dreaming state, that's when you're having dreams. And the dreamless state is the state between the point where you lay your head on the pillow and the point where you have dreams. And one time, actually, during that state, I was able to experience consciousness during the dreamless state, which is called, I believe, Nidra. So there is consciousness even while you're unconscious. The consciousness is still there. Sutra 139. Or the mind becomes concentrated and still by meditating on anything one chooses. Anything that you can focus your mind on, a movie, something like that. When concentration is mastered, one gains mastery over the smallest to largest dimensions. 141. When the mind and the heart are purified, the practitioner realizes that the knower, knowable, and knowledge are one. The mind is like a mirror that has had the dust wiped clean. Again, 141, such an important sutra. Sutra 142. At this stage called Savitarka Samadhi, the word, meaning, and content are blended, becoming special wisdom. 143. In Nirvitaka Samadhi, you realize the difference between memory and intellectual illumination. Your memory has been cleansed, and the light of consciousness shines with blissful purity. Sutra 144. Savichara Samadhi, deliberate, and Nirvichara Samadhi, non-deliberate, are the contemplation of the subtle aspects. it's hard to understand, so you have to read the sutras that are around it. Sutra 144, you go, what? So you have to study the rest of the sutras. The subtlest dimension is consciousness. When consciousness dissolves in the space around you, it loses all attachments and becomes pure. Did you hear that? Sutra 146. The states of samadhi described previously are dependent upon previous knowledge, which can lead to attachment. So even if you get to that state where your consciousness becomes one with the space around you, even the sutra itself becomes a limitation at that point because you become attached to the knowledge. Because there's a difference between remembering and knowing. Sutra 147. From mastery of nirvichara samadhi, purity is attained and undisturbed, illuminated consciousness flows, igniting the spiritual light of the self. I'll read 3 of these. Second translation. When one attains perfection of the samadhi, free of conscious reflection, one's soul becomes serene and benevolent. Third translation. The purity of nirvichara samadhi results in the spirit shining bright in luminous splendor. So if you look at the pictures of Christ with his aura glowing and that big halo, if you look at the pictures of Buddha with the halo and then his aura glowing, this helps to explain it. 148. When consciousness and wisdom become one, limitations are removed. Then the practitioner is capable of knowing anything and everything. You know what I say? It's. Have you ever looked at a child from like 1 to 5 years old? How they pick it up, they learn the language right there. They're born not knowing a language, but they learn the language because they have nothing on their mind. They just know. Well, each memory builds up, right? Sutra 149. The absolute truth is all-encompassing, limitless, and infinite. Sutra 150. The light of this realization bears the fruit of an evolved life. All previous mental impressions are left behind, and new ones are prevented from forming. Sutra 151. When this impression is wiped out, all impressions are completely eradicated, and perfect self-realization is achieved. It's important to get the second translation of this too. When the light of this evolved state is also erased, seamless samadhi dawns. Thanks so much, guys. If you have any questions, if you're confused at all, please put the questions in the comments. Please buy my book, Yoga Sutras by Vincent Ferra. Be well, guys.